When I first moved into the neighborhood, it felt like I had stepped into a postcard. The lawns were perfect, the houses freshly painted, and the people waved like we were all part of some TV commercial about the American dream. I thought I had finally found peace. For years, I'd worked hard, saved money, and this house felt like the reward. But it didn't take long before I noticed the cracks in that perfect picture. It started with letters from the HOA. At first, they were small complaints. My trash can was too close to the curb, my truck wasn't parked straight, my grass was half an inch too tall. I laughed it off, but the tone of the letters grew colder, harsher, like someone was watching me constantly. Then came the day a neighbor pulled me aside, his eyes full of fear. He whispered that the HOA had connections with the local police, and if anyone dared to resist their rules, the order was simple: shoot if they resist. I thought he was exaggerating, but his trembling hands told me otherwise. That night, I stared at my ceiling, wondering what kind of place I had really moved into. It happened on a sunny afternoon. I was digging in my yard, trying to fix a drainage problem. Nothing unusual, just me, a shovel, and the dirt. Out of nowhere, 2 HOA board members marched toward me, faces twisted in anger. They shouted that I had no approval to dig. I told them, calmly, that it was my yard and I didn't need permission to move dirt on my own property. Their eyes narrowed like predators who had just been challenged. Within minutes, a police cruiser pulled up. My stomach dropped. 2 officers stepped out, one with his hand already resting on his holster. One HOA member pointed at me and screamed, "He's resisting!" My blood ran cold. I wasn't resisting anything. I wasn't breaking any laws. I was just standing there with a shovel. For a terrifying second, the officer's hand hovered over his gun, and I thought my life was about to end in my own yard. After a tense silence, the officer muttered something under his breath, got back into the cruiser, and drove away. The HOA members leaned close to me before leaving and whispered, "This isn't over." I knew then the rumors weren't rumors, they were warnings. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the scene in my mind. The angry HOA board members, the cop's hand on his gun, the way they tried to frame me as a threat. It didn't make sense. Why did they care so much about me digging a small hole? Why act like I was breaking the law for touching my own soil? The more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't about grass or property rules. It was about control. Something was buried deeper than I could see. Literally. I sat at my kitchen table until dawn, staring at the shovel leaning by the door. My neighbor's warning echoed in my head. They told cops to shoot if anyone resists. What if there was more to it than threats? What if the HOA wasn't just strict, but hiding something? By morning, I had made up my mind. Whatever it was, I was gonna find it. So I grabbed the shovel, walked into my yard, and started digging again. The sun was barely up when I struck something solid. First, I thought it was just an old pipe, but when I cleared the dirt, I saw the edge of a large, mud-covered plastic barrel buried deep underground. My pulse raced as I clawed away at the soil, finally dragging the heavy container into the daylight. I knelt beside it, my hands trembling. What could the HOA possibly be hiding in my yard? With a crowbar, I pried it open. The smell of damp paper hit me first. Inside were sealed bags filled with documents, stacks of them. My curiosity quickly turned into horror as I flipped through the files. They weren't harmless records. They were HOA financial papers, contracts, and private lists of homeowners who had been fined, threatened, and even forced out. Some of the documents had initials of police officers, linked to strange payments. And then I saw the worst page of all. A typed directive that read, "Use force. If they resist, shoot." My hands shook as I realized the truth. The HOA wasn't just about lawns and fences. They had built an entire system of power and fear, and now I had the proof buried in my own backyard. I knew I couldn't go to the police. They were in on it. If I handed them the documents, they'd destroy everything, and I'd probably disappear in the process. So I did the only thing I could. I went public. That night, I set up my phone, pointed it at the evidence, and hit go live. Thousands of people joined as I pulled out document after document, reading aloud the damning words. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. I showed the records of payouts, the contracts that forced families out, the typed line ordering police to shoot if anyone resisted. The chat exploded with outrage. Neighbors began gathering in my yard, some crying, some furious. The HOA board members tried to shut me down, but it was too late. People were recording, screenshots were being taken, and the truth was spreading faster than they could stop it. For the first time since moving in, I didn't feel alone. The neighborhood was waking up. The next days were a blur. News crews arrived. The live stream went viral. The HOA board members were arrested, and even the officers tied to the documents faced investigations. My once perfect neighborhood turned into a national story. Neighbors who had been silent for years finally spoke out, sharing how they had been threatened, fined, or intimidated into obedience. For me, it was surreal. I had moved in hoping for peace, and instead uncovered corruption buried under my own lawn. Sometimes, I walk out into my backyard and stand on the very spot where I first dug. The grass has grown back, but I can still feel the weight of what I uncovered. And I think about the warning my neighbor gave me, that the HOA told cops to shoot if anyone resisted. It wasn't just paranoia, it was real. But what they never expected was someone like me picking up a shovel and refusing to stay silent. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Sometimes the truth is buried deep, but if you're willing to dig, you just might save an entire community. This was just one of many wild neighborhood stories. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on the bell, because here at QZ Stories, we bring you the craziest tales of revenge, justice, and neighborhood drama every week. Don't miss the next one. It might just be even more unbelievable.